I have really good news. Today our nation has achieved a medical miracle. We have delivered a safe and effective vaccine in just 9 months.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Look how helpless he is. Can't even change his own diaper. Well, can't or won't. Diapers are all about power dynamics. I poop, they wipe, bam! I'm the boss.
Discuss this. The other big confirmation hearing that was taking place yesterday as well was RFK Jr. Well, one comment that he has made seems to have, at least one comment is making a lot of controversy. So let's just have a listen to what he said about Operation Warp Speed.
I do have a question for you on Project Warp Speed.
What I want to do is, I'm not a scientist. I want to empower scientists. I want to make sure that science is unobstructed by vested or economic interests.
That's good.
Or by bad culture. And I'll just say about Operation Warp Speed, it was an extraordinary accomplishment, demonstration of leadership by President Trump. When he promoted Operation Warp Speed, he was looking at all of the different remedies, including vaccines.
Therapeutics, everything.
Therapeutic, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, famotidine, even chlorine dioxide. And he was not looking at shutting down our country for the year, forcing people to wear masks for a year, forcing all social distancing that did not have any scientific basis, which Dr. Fauci has now acknowledged. He said, we took it out of thin air. But all of those changed during the Biden administration. And it became very narrowly focused. We ended up with the worst, the highest death count of any country in the world.
Is that true?
What, death count? Where do we start? COVID deaths? Is RFK really pushing that old chestnut? What COVID deaths?
Is it true that in practice, Warp Speed was about anything other than vaccines?
No, it was all about vaccines. It was all about vaccines. They commandeered the military to drive this massive deployment of experimental, highly dangerous and non-tested, non-safe, toxic shots. Period. End of story. I mean, how many times do we have to go through this? And RFK Jr., for political reasons, not to implicate his new boss, Donald Trump, he's backing off and saying what a great thing Operation Warp Speed is. His whole organization, Children's Self Defense, has spent the last 5 years practically just railing against Operation Warp Speed and the experimental COVID vaccines. And in one fell swoop, RFK has thrown Children's Health Defense under the bus and everybody working in that organization and mothers with children with autism. And the list goes on and on and on. And I mean, it's just unbelievable. How can you defend one of the worst crimes against humanity that maimed and killed countless people globally? How can you sit there and praise Operation Warp Speed? It's really unbelievable.
It didn't end there because we have a little bit more.
Jerry, would you recommend that parents get their children vaccinated against HPV?
I recommend that children follow the CDC schedule. And I will support the CDC schedule when I get in there, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed.
Would you recommend that parents get their children vaccinated against the measles? Yes or no?
Against measles? Yes.
Well, I just remind everybody that.
Okay. So Robert F. Kennedy, who's been campaigning against the childhood schedule for the longest time, says he now supports the childhood vaccine schedule. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. So he's capitulated to the establishment, to Big Pharma, in the most profound way. I mean, I can't believe I heard that from him especially. He could have said, oh, well, the childhood vaccine schedule needs to really be looked at. It is excessive. How many vaccines did Robert F. Kennedy have as a child? 3? Or something like that? I mean, he could talk to the boomers, Mike, and say, we're healthy. We only had 3. Why do these children need 60 or 70 vaccines before the age of 5? I mean, you could easily make that appeal, but he is afraid of not getting confirmed and being labeled an anti-vaxxer. So he has taken the middle of the road, halfway house position and basically thrown again mothers against children with autism under the bus and all these groups like that. So let's take a look, Mike, at the childhood vaccine schedule. It's important that people understand in the United States, especially, how aggressively this policy is pushed state to state and even at the federal level. I mean, there's so many of these lists. It's endless here. And so what I've done here is also compiled, Mike, from the Cleveland Clinic, which is a known pediatric authority in America. We just to give you a little taste of basically what's available on this particular childhood vaccine schedule, and it goes on and on and on. Newborn to 6 months, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 18 months, right up to the age of 16. Let's just take a look at it. I mean, it's just endless. This is the childhood vaccine schedule. This doesn't count the flu and the COVID shots, which are every year, the RSV shots that are every year up to the age of 5, practically. 11 to 12-year-olds, tetanus, repeat that again for the rest of your life, and so forth and so on. Okay, so in RFK and all these previous statements about vaccine safety, all the virtue signaling has been tossed aside for the process of this public demonstration down on one knee to the pharmaceutical industry, basically. I mean, I don't really know what else to say on this, but I mean, it is quite shocking. Of all the issues he had to capitulate on, the childhood vaccine schedule, it is really beyond belief.
Okay, thank you. Now let me welcome Mark to the program then.
They took that child to the doctor, the pediatrician, when he's 2 years old. He sees all the milestones, and they get the shot that night. They have a fever, 103, then they go into seizures, and 3 months later their brain's gone. And yet they try to say they are Holocaust deniers. This is a Holocaust. But this is only
if your kids were young now, would you give them the measles, the mumps vaccine?
No. 17 years, I'm not anti-vaccine.
You're not anti-vaccine. You say you vaccinate your own children.
I had all my children vaccinated. I was fully vaccinated. I'm pro-vaccine. I've never said anything anti-vaccine. I have never been anti-vax. I have never told the public avoid vaccination. I see somebody on a hiking trail carrying a little baby, and I say to them, better not get them vaccinated. And he heard that from me. If he hears it from 10 other people, maybe he won't do it. Maybe he will save that child. We created an entire generation with all these allergies by giving them these early vaccines.
You said, quote, there's no vaccine that is, safe and effective. Do you still believe that?
I never said that. There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
You went to Samoa. An outbreak resulted in 83 deaths.
Nobody died in Samoa from measles. They were dying from a bad vaccine.
You still say that autism is caused by vaccines?
Yeah, autism is caused by vaccines. There are plenty of studies that make it clear that SIDS is caused by vaccines. And I will tell you this, that every child is damaged. All of these injuries that are invisible from the vaccine. People just keep chanting safe and effective, safe and effective.
How can I get my young adult kids to understand this information so they don't vaccinate their kids when the time comes?
If you figure that out, call me and let me know so I can talk to my kids. If you've ever compared an unvaccinated kid to a vaccinated kid, you see the bright eyes and the engagement and the social interactions and the curiosity and the affection and you compare them. A child even had 1 or 2 vaccines and they're completely different. And those injuries don't get measured. They poisoned an entire generation of American children.
For America's children right now, do you recommend they take the MMR vaccine?
I'm not gonna.
Okay, one last fun question. One last one.
I don't agree with that, but okay. Do you have concerns about the level of Israeli influence in our politics here in the United States of America?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a politician in political office, so I don't see much of that. For giving me this extraordinary opportunity, and I want to introduce my family and thank them for being here. My wife Cheryl, my cousin Anthony Shriver, my daughter Kik, my other daughter Kira, Catalina Shriver, Joey Shriver, Jackson Hines, and Amaryllis Kennedy. Oh, and I want to thank all of you for your support and throughout this whole 2.5-year journey. My first time in this Oval Office was in 1961, and I came here to meet or 1962. I came here and I had a meeting with my uncle, who was president then, where we talked about the environment. He was involved deeply, as we all know, in restoring physical fitness in this country. He challenged at one point during his administration, he challenged Americans to do a 50-mile walk, which I ultimately did. But I remember the day that my father completed his walk. We were staying up at Camp David, and my father came in after 18 hours walking on the CNO towpath with his feet bleeding and blisters on them. My father had one of his best friends was Al Lowenstein. And Al Lowenstein ultimately was a congressman from New York who was assassinated himself in 1980. But Al Lowenstein had started the Dump Johnson movement to get rid of President Johnson and end the Vietnam War. And at the time that he started it, people just thought it was a fool's errand. And ultimately, he asked my father to run for president against Johnson. My father wouldn't do it at that time, and he asked Gene McCarthy. McCarthy did it, and he joined that campaign. And my father ultimately ran, and Johnson then dropped out. So Al Lowenstein succeeded. And although Al Lowenstein was on the other side now, running against my father with Gene McCarthy, my father wrote him a note, a quote from Emerson, where he said, "If a single man plant himself firmly on his own ideal and there abide, the whole wide world will come round to him." For 20 years, I've gotten up every morning on my knees and prayed that God would put me in a position where I can end the childhood chronic disease epidemic in this country. On August 23rd of last year, God sent me President Trump, and he gave me he's now given me, he's kept every promise that he's made to me. He's kept his word in every account and gone way beyond it. I'm so grateful to you, Mr. President. A lot of people told me that I couldn't trust President Trump, that I better get it in writing. And we did a handshake, and everything that he told me he was going to do, he has done. And I'm so grateful to him, and I've told you before, I genuinely believe that you are a pivotal historical figure, and you are going to transform this country at a time when we see all of the indicia of democracy now in tatters in our country. We see the rise of the military-industrial complex, the rise of totalitarianism, these attacks on our Constitution, and this breathtaking epidemic that is disabling our people. President Trump has promised to restore the American dream in this country. A healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person only has one. 60% of our population has only one dream, that they get better. President Trump has promised that he's going to restore America's strength. But we can't be a strong nation if we have a weak citizenry. If people are sick, 60% of our people are sick, 77%, as President Trump mentioned, of our children cannot qualify for military service. And we need a man on a white horse now. We need somebody who is willing to come in and has the spine and the guts and the strength to challenge orthodoxies, to stand in the way of vested interests, and to break institutions that have turned against our democracy. President Trump has shown again and again that he is that hero. And most recently, I greatly appreciate it, and I called you the day that you announced the termination of USAID. My uncle started USAID in 1961 for humanitarian purposes, to put our country on the side of the poor. It has been captured by the military-industrial complex. It has become a sinister propagator of totalitarianism and war across the globe. And very few people understand how sinister this agency really is. And President Trump saw that, and he stood up to it with a masterstroke. And we want to do the same thing with the institutions that are stealing the health of our children. We need a revolutionary figure, and you are that figure, and I'm very grateful for you for giving me this opportunity. I want to recognize some of the allies that I've had in this battle for a long time: Senator Rand Paul, Senator Ron Johnson, Senator Roger Marshall, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Buddy Carter, who've all been champions of the MAHA agenda before I even came along. I'm very grateful for you for standing strong. Thank you very much, President Trump.
I think the gist of what you're trying to say today is you're really pro-vaccine, you want to ask questions. You have started a group called the Children's Health Defense. You're the originator. Right now, as I understand it, on their website, they are selling what's called onesies. These are little things, clothing for babies. One of them is titled Unvaxxed, Unafraid. Next one, and they're sold for $26 a piece, by the way. Next one is No Vax, No Problem. Now, you're coming before this committee and you say you're pro-vaccine. Just want to ask some questions. And yet your organization is making money selling a child's product to parents for $26, which casts fundamental doubt on the usefulness of vaccines. Can you tell us now that you will, now that you are pro-vaccine, that you're going to have your organization take these products off the market?
Senator, I have no power over that organization. I'm not part of it. I resigned from the board.
Yeah, that was just a few months ago. You founded that. You certainly have power. You can make that call. Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing to do with leadership.
Are you supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive of vaccines.
Minister Farrakhan has asked me to address the issue of vaccines and African American and vaccine safety. I want to start out by saying this, and I want to say it emphatically. I am pro-vaccine. I have always been fiercely pro-vaccine. I had all 6 of my children vaccinated, and I believe that we ought to have policies that encourage full vaccination for all Americans.
So here's RFK. This is, I'm telling you, this is just winning stuff. This is, again, I don't want to say it perfectly parallels what Donald Trump was doing on the Republican side of the aisle in 2016, but there are a lot of similarities. So here is RFK Jr. on with Kim Iverson, another great alternative press member. RFK Jr. exposes climate scam, says WEF and Bill Gates exploiting issues to clamp down totalitarian controls on society.
Where do you stand on climate policies that are being enacted right now?
The biggest crisis that we now face as a race, as a world, as civilization, is global warming, climate chaos. I think global warming is the gravest threat. All of the modeling for climate change indicates that we're going to be facing superstorms, storms on steroids, droughts, famine, the disappearance of the ice caps, the disappearance of the glaciers on every continent. I think those guys who are doing the Koch brothers bidding and who are against all the evidence of the rational mind are saying that global warming doesn't exist, that they are contemptible human beings, and that, I wish that there were a law you could punish them under.
Is this some sort of a death cult trying to take over our country? Is it the same criminal cabal behind 9/11 that's behind the COVID-19 pandemic, that's behind the rigged 2020 election, that's behind all this global warming madness, wanting to put you into a carbon emission, carbon footprint slavery?
We don't need to abolish carbon in this country.
in order to understand that our deadly addiction to it is the principal enemy to America's prosperity, to our leadership, to our national security, to the values that make us proud to be part of this country. California, which is our most fuel-efficient state, is also the richest state and has the most vibrant economy. So we know that when you decarbonize your economy, when you get off of coal and oil, you immediately experience the rewards of prosperity. Now we have a market that is governed by rules that were written by the carbon incumbents to reward the dirtiest, filthiest, most poisonous, most toxic, most warmongering fuels from hell, rather than the cheap, clean, green, wholesome, and patriotic fuels from heaven.
Clive Bundy did not surprise me. I knew that this whole Tea Party movement came out of the nostalgia for a plantation economy. That's where it came from. Why is it that they all came out of those dozen southern states that were part of the Confederacy? This is the resurgence of the Confederacy. That's why I'm not going to go on. I got to shut up.
You hear the teabaggers saying that big government is the big threat to our democracy.
Are you solidly for Hillary, or are you more anti-Trump?
No, I'm solidly for Hillary. I think Hillary is going to be a very, very good president.
New Yorkers come from everywhere. The best people from all over the country in every walk of life gravitate towards New York. We've produced the leaders that have articulated a vision for America of a community of all kinds of different people who go together because we share a value. It is against everything we stand for as a state to say that you can't participate in public life in this state because you weren't born here. We should be proud in our state that we've gotten somebody of the quality and the timber and the character of Hillary Clinton.